Once more, welcome back to the Valencia Property Podcast, and it's May and things have been getting really busy and a bit warm, although today is cloudy unusually for Valencia, and there's a huge storm over the back of my office, but more of that later. So yes, we have a new office which we've opened up in La Pobla de Ibona, which is where I'm recording this. I recorded the last one here too, but finally everything is done, touch wood. This episode is sponsored by the Spanish Siesta. You know we always have a sponsor, and this month rather, it's the Spanish Siesta. Quite possibly the most compelling reason to move to Spain, at least for me, and one that doesn't nearly get enough credit. When I came to live here, it was something I just had to take on board. You can't fight it, or rather in those days you couldn't fight it. The whole country slowed down in the afternoon. You either joined in or you sat there being maybe productive and miserable while everyone else is horizontal. I joined in. It's now one of my favourite things about the Spanish culture, and honestly, it's disappearing bit by bit. So we decided to get the siesta in as a sponsor to try and make it popular again. Do you siesta? You should siesta. Anyway, I'm doing my best to make sure it remains a mainstay of Spanish culture, so there we are. The siesta. Highly recommended. Consider this your official endorsement from our official sponsor. What do you mean, how do you do a siesta? You lie down and you go to sleep for a bit. I always find it's best to set an alarm so you don't wake up 2.5 hours later and go, oh God, where did the afternoon go? Something like 45 minutes. Train your body to fall asleep in 5 minutes. You'll get a great sleep. You'll feel much better in the afternoon. The siesta is perfect. Right, on with the show. Today we're talking about something that comes up every few months without fail, and it's the question we get from some clients. Is the Valencia property market going to crash? Well, sometimes when everybody is asking that, maybe it is going to, but my short answer at the moment is no. At least, I don't think so. The longer answer is worth listening to, so I thought I'd actually tell you what it is, because for once in the history of property punditry, or any punditry about economics or anything, this time it's different actually might be true. So here's the picture we've got at the moment. Spain is building around 140,000 homes a year, and new household formation is running at about 180,000 a year. So that's just new household formation. That's coming from kids leaving home and wanting to spread the wings, maybe go to university or whatever. Before you add foreign buyers, domestic investors who want to buy a second place because that's where Spanish people put their money, or the perfectly normal churn of people whose lives change and just need to move, you already have a structural shortfall. Supply can't keep up with those basics. Layer in everything else. Foreign buyers are a significant and growing part of the market. They're not going away. Mortgage rates sitting around 2.7% mean more domestic buyers can actually get finance, but also foreign buyers can get finance if they want. Those interest rates aren't flying up anytime soon, it seems. Investors, Spanish and international, are still looking at property as one of the more reliable places to put money, because where else do you put your money in a everything bubble? And then there are the people who have always bought and sold because life moves on. The family that needs more space, the couple whose kids have left, the person who inherited a place and needs to release the cash. That demand-supply relationship, it never stops. What happens when a market like this slows down is not a crash. It's a soft landing. Transaction volumes come down first, and prices follow more slowly, if at all. The gap between what sellers want and what buyers will pay narrows as both sides adjust. Properties sit slightly longer. Negotiating room appears where previously there wasn't any, and that's usually on the overpriced properties. And that's a healthy market, not a collapsing one. Now, you don't believe me, so I'm going to say one thing very simply. Cast your mind back to 2008, and yes, I know it was 18 years ago, but cast your mind back to 2008 if you can. That was a crash, and what a crash it was. Banks collapsed. People were trapped in negative equity on mortgages they could no longer afford because interest rates were high and climbing. Credit disappeared almost overnight, so new mortgages became nearly impossible to get. Sellers who needed to sell faced a market where buyers had vanished and finance had dried up, and uncertainty was global. Prices didn't drift down. They fell off a cliff. None of those conditions exist right now. Interest rates are low, banks are not overexposed in the same way, and Spanish lending, for example, has become far more conservative since the crisis, and with good reason. I remember going into a bank, and on a property that was 200,000, they would give you 240,000, which was like 200,000 plus the taxes, plus the cost, plus maybe a little bit for a holiday. Do you want to buy a car? Yeah, why don't you have this? That's what happened. This doesn't happen anymore. The demand driving prices is real and comes from multiple directions, not just from cheap credit inflating a single speculative bubble. There are plenty of speculative bubbles around. Crypto, anyone? What you really want to look at are fundamentals in the market. And we know we should never say, "This time it's different." It's a phrase that has preceded some spectacular disasters in the past. But what we can say is the conditions that caused the last crash are simply not present. A crash needs a trigger. It needs credit to collapse. It needs rates to spike. It needs confidence to evaporate and sellers to panic into a buyer-free market, all at roughly the same time. The one scenario that changes all of that is a genuine black swan event. Now, if you've ever read Nicholas Taleb's book, The Black Swan, you'll know what that means. It means something happens that makes everything change. Something nobody saw coming that hits the global economy hard and fast. And you might have noticed a few little things are happening over the last month and a half that have hit the global economy hard and fast. But what happened? So far, nothing has happened in the property market except continued demand. What it will need is a major financial institution falling in a way that freezes credit markets, for example. It will need this conflict to spiral beyond containment. It will need Trump to not get bored after 5 minutes and change his mind, which he does every single day. Something that fundamentally changes the cost and availability of money everywhere for everyone at once. Wasn't there a film or something last year? Anyway, that possibility always exists. But here's the thing. You can't build a property purchase strategy around something that's unpredictable. What you can do is look at the conditions in front of you, compare them with, honestly, what a real crash looks like, and make a rational decision. Right now, those conditions are pointing one way, and I'll let you make that decision yourself. But for me, it doesn't look like a crash. It looks like prices continue to rise. Not as fast as last year, and they'll slow down, and eventually that will come to a halt. Will prices fall? Some prices will fall. People who are asking too much won't get it and will drop the prices, and it'll make the market look as if the price is dropping a bit. But the truth is, there's so much demand around. And as long as that demand is still there, prices don't fall. And Spain is seen, firstly, as a safe haven to go to. Let's say Dubai isn't, for example. And secondly, as a good place, not only to live, but to retire and also to invest. The next part of our podcast, we have a proper guest. I sat down with Lisa Guinn, who spent 30 years in Silicon Valley at HP, Google, Intuit. She was there for the internet revolution and stayed long enough to watch the whole thing change around her. 3 years ago, she and her husband left California and moved to Valencia. They're in El Carmen, renting a 3-bedroom apartment, and they have no plans whatsoever to go back to whatever that madness is over there. We had a long talk. We talked about renting here as a retired American couple with imperfect Spanish and no local job. It wasn't easy when they did it. We helped them. It's harder now. We get into healthcare costs, which are always the numbers that stop people in the tracks, really. We talk about the menú del día. We talk about cycling to the beach and what a day actually looks like when you don't have to be anywhere, but you could be, well, anywhere. But the part I found most interesting was the Silicon Valley conversation. Lisa has a clear-eyed view of what's happened to the tech industry. The shift from don't be evil, remember that? To pure profit. The 60 and 70-hour work weeks that people actually bragged about, and what she calls, like everyone, the enshittification of the internet. She also has sharp things to say about AI and why the problem isn't the technology, it's what you're feeding it. We finish with her advice to anyone still sitting on the fence. No spoilers, but it's pretty direct.
Mercado Central's vibrant maze, colors dance in changing days.
Here I am talking today with Lisa, who came over to Valencia some years ago. So I'm going to give you some questions, Lisa. And firstly, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lisa Guinn. I moved to Valencia about 3 years ago this spring, and I used to work in Silicon Valley, and we left California for a lot of fun reasons.
Well, we'll get into those because, traditionally people have moved to California, the gold rush and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly, for 100 years and more, yes.
Yeah. So, you came here 3 years ago, more or less, yeah?
Yeah.
And you didn't buy, you rented. So
Yeah.
tell us about the process of finding a rental, because it was difficult then. It's even more difficult now.
Yes, it was not easy then. And we talked about buying, but we thought, we don't know what we're doing in Spain. We have no clue.
Uh-huh.
And so when we first came, we just took a short-term rental and tried to learn about the city. And after we'd been here a while, we wanted to get a longer-term lease. And you're right, it was extremely difficult because our Spanish is not great. And we didn't have jobs because we're retired.
Yeah, which
And
makes it really difficult because they want to see steady income from a job.
from a job, yes, they like that job. I think there's probably some kind of insurance that landlords could get to protect them against non-payment, and I get that. But eventually, we just kind of threw our hands up because nobody was returning our calls, and we did actually go to Stepping Stone Rentals and ask them to help us find a long-term contract, which we did. We have a place that we adore, and and for that, we did have to prove that we had savings and a steady source of income. And I think that in the end, I think our landlord's actually pretty happy because she realizes, I think our person from Stepping Stone explained to her that, if we don't pay our rent, we get thrown out of the country.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So they don't really have to worry about us being occupados.
But it might not actually be true, but they believe it. So that's the important thing.
Well, we probably should be thrown out of the country. We don't pay our rent.
Well, maybe. So tell us about where you're actually staying. What size is it? Number of bedrooms? Where is it, etc.?
Well, we ended up in a 3-bedroom apartment, which is what we wanted because we want to have room for guests. We want all our friends to come visit us in Valencia, and most of them have. So
you want to tell them now not to come anymore, right?
No, they can still, but as long as they don't overstay the look.
Right. Okay.
I think guests are good for about a week to 2 weeks, and after that, they need to move along.
Yeah, just like to say to all Lisa's friends, remember, a week to 2 weeks, nothing more. Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
Then we start to get on their nerves and vice versa. But I know 3 bedrooms, 2 baths is pretty perfect for having guests. And then that gives us 1 spare bedroom that we use as an office. And
how much are you paying?
we're paying right now about $1,900.
Okay.
And it's gone up a bit. We started at $1,800 and, over the couple of years now, that we've had
inflation.
Yeah, it's just the annual increase. So it's been quite reasonable. I'm frankly a little concerned what will happen at the end of our 5-year lease.
Yeah.
Because I expect that the bump will be quite a bit more.
Or not. Because if the landlord's happy with you, it's easier to keep someone in the property at a similar price rather than try to find someone and maybe have it empty for a few months or whatever because you're asking too much. But some landlords are idiots, so yeah.
No, our landlord has actually been very reasonable, very lovely. It's a private landlord. It's not run by a company.
Yeah.
And this is a property that's been in their family for some time, but they've done a really good job of maintaining it. And it's really very up to date, very nice. I think the whole building was built in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So compared to most places in El Carmen, which is where we are, it's a pretty new property.
Yeah. Totally new. Less than 20 years old. Totally new.
Exactly.
So, you said to me a couple of days ago that your social life here in Valencia is much more active than it was in the States. Can you tell us about that?
Well, yes. I mean, when we lived in the U.S., I was still working, and our social life was who can we meet up with on a weekend, occasionally on a weeknight. But here, I'm involved in a lot of activities. I joined the International Women's Club of Valencia, which is a nice resource for ladies, but also has a lot of activities that both my husband and I participate in. So there's a conversation group where we practice our Spanish, which we desperately need to practice.
Okay, how's your Spanish coming along?
It's coming along.
That
but
doesn't answer the question.
It's better than it was when I got here.
That's the most important thing.
That's the most important thing, and I will continue to work on it. I think that's the other most important thing. Funny story. Before I retired, I used to tell my husband, let's take a sabbatical, like 3 to 6 months, and go live in Puerto Rico, which, of course, is still part of the U.S., and in 6 months, I'll learn Spanish. And, of course, then I moved here and started to really try to learn Spanish. Yeah. And I laugh at that idiot person who thought they could go to Puerto Rico for 6 months. But I'm about to push my way out of A2 into B1. So I feel like, no, I'm getting there. And there are a lot of great Spanish schools in Valencia. And private teachers, there's a lot of good ways to learn Spanish. You just have to kind of stay at it.
Yeah, you've actually got, the thing is, you've got to make the effort. And a lot of people don't want to get out of a comfort zone and make that effort. We always say to people, for example, don't go to supermarkets, go to the local market, talk to the people, order things like, say, I want these cherries or whatever, because it's easier. It's much more difficult than picking it up off a shelf and just taking it to the checkout.
Right, where they're going to say, gracias, and that's the entire extended conversation.
Yeah. Next thing then, what does your day-to-day look like? Because you're not working now, so what do you actually do on a day-to-day basis when you're not in your passive social world?
One of the joys of being retired is I don't have to get up early if I don't feel like it. We have a leisurely breakfast. A lot of days we do go out for lunch, so try to take advantage of the menu del dia.
Okay, what sort of prices are you paying for the menu del dia these days?
Well, it's gotten to be a little bit more expensive. I see the difference even in just 3 years, but usually under 20. Yeah. I mean, if you get away from the tourist areas, and of course we live in El Carmen, which is kind of tourist central. There's pluses and minuses to that, but it doesn't take long. I mean, you only have to walk a few blocks, so you find that there are neighborhood places that still have a Spanish menu del dia in the 17 bajua range.
Yeah, and I think, I actually like, in inverted commas, paying 18, 19 rather than 15, trying to find the cheapest. Right. I find the cheapest is generally not as good, and I pay that extra €3 to get a good menu a day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And usually it's a very substantial meal. So then in the evening, we like to bicycle. So sometimes we like to take our bikes and go down to Vitoria and maybe down to Pinedo to the beach. And then in the evening, we'll usually just figure out something out of the kitchen or eat a sandwich or whatever.
Just like graze, yeah?
Grazing is a big deal. And now, if we do eat, we've made a conscious effort to switch over to more Spanish eating hours. But it's hard for me to eat a giant meal at 9 p.m. and then want to go to bed before 2 in the morning.
What about the quality of the food? Because one of the things we often get told is, and I don't know this because I've never lived in the States, but people often say to us about the quality of food is so different here.
It is different. I find that in general, it's less expensive. Even the quote processed food that you might buy, it has fewer ingredients. I mean, I look at the ingredient lists because I try to pay attention to these things. And, bread has a few things in it. It doesn't have an ingredients list that I can't understand. So
lots of E numbers and things like that.
Yeah,
it doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen here. I think the food is just much cleaner. The Spanish in general, I think, don't season as heavily as Americans do with salt and whatever. But I mean, no, there's salt if you want it. And
someone coming from Britain, where we don't season anything with anything, they think the Spanish use a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But when I've been to the States, it's like, geez, this is salty.
Yes. Tends to be.
Yeah. So here's where we get into the more interesting stuff. Yeah?
Yeah, okay.
Right. So you told me recently you worked in Silicon Valley for 30 years and you escaped, if you like, to come here to Spain from California, which traditionally is where people used to go to.
Yes.
So what can you tell us about your experience in Silicon Valley for 30 years? I mean, what years was it? When did you finish?
So I moved to Silicon Valley from the Midwest in Arkansas in about 1990. And so I was there for a lot of the internet revolution, if you will. And it was pretty interesting. I wasn't on the front lines of the most exciting AI business. I was more of one of the people in the background that keeps the lights on, keeps the servers running. But still, it was a really fascinating time in Silicon Valley. But it's very much an environment where there's a lot of pressure to succeed. A lot of hours spent at work, a lot of commitment to that. And especially as I got older, I started to see that you can put in 60 hours a week, but, those are hours that you spend away from your family. And so pretty quickly, even by 2000, I was like, this is not the life I want to live. But, you still are, the pressure's still there.
We expected to work like 60-hour weeks, 70-hour weeks.
If you're at a startup, it's almost essential because you're sort of in crisis mode a great deal of the time. Then I went to some of the larger companies like Google, for example. You're not in crisis mode every minute. So you can live a more balanced life. But a lot of it depends on your job. And of course, if you're one of the great innovators, then your compensation hopefully matches the effort you're putting in and the genius that you have. I'm not a genius. I went to work. I did a good job. I had a good time. But especially as I was getting older, I'm like, I don't want to just work until I die. I don't want to work until I retire. And at that moment, I had no energy left to have a life, which is the other alternative. So I was really lucky at Google. I had a manager who found a way for me to work part-time. And after a while, I said, I think, boss, I would like to live in Europe. And originally, my plan was to work part-time while here in Spain. But that's not a very easy visa to get. And ultimately, it didn't work out very well and decided just to fully retire. And I never thought I would be so happy retired as I am.
Well, one question about that is you come to Spain and you've managed to retire. Would you have been able to retire in the States at the same age?
No, absolutely not possible.
Why?
Certainly living in California is quite expensive. Food is expensive. Housing is very expensive. Transportation,
healthcare, I'm assuming, as well.
Healthcare is ridiculous. And for me in particular, because my husband and I are both now in our 70s, we have health issues. And, if we wanted private healthcare in the U.S., it would have been astronomical.
Okay, so you just said something secret there. You're in your 70s now.
Yes.
How much is your healthcare per month here?
Per month here? Well, we're on the public system now. We've been here long enough. We're on the public system.
When you weren't on the public system.
So, we actually still have private as well. So we have both because it's so inexpensive. For us, private healthcare is about $2,500 a year or a little less for me.
So just over $200 a month.
Just about $200 a month for each of us. So together, it's about $4,700.
Okay. And the question about that, do you have to pay anything else?
Oh no, that is the premium policy where there's no copay, no deductibles, whatever.
So you go see a doctor, you don't have to pay an extra amount on top. You have an operation, you don't have to pay the first $10,000.
Oh no, not it. However, we did have a couple of pre-existing conditions, which is one reason why we decided to go in the public system.
Because you can do that once you've been here a year.
Once you've been here a year. And it's for the public system, it costs us, we're on the Convenio Especial.
Convenio Especial.
Yeah, because we're not permanent residents. And that costs us $157 a piece per month. And again, that is 100% coverage for everything.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we're sort of covered two ways. I feel like there was no way we could have even gotten this level of health care in the U.S., much less paid for it.
I think one of the things that people find surprising when they hear about the costs here is when you go to the doctor and they give you a prescription and you go to the chemist and you pick up the prescription for the medicine, how much you pay for the medicine.
Oh yeah, we pay, and we do. I mean, at our age, there are certain things that we pay every month.
I spend a
which
lot
would-
of time at the chemist picking up medicines for my family. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And in the States, we were lucky because our prescriptions were covered by Medicare and our private insurance, and we were paying under $100 a month. But here, we're paying more like a quarter of that. It's less. So it's like maybe €5 a month or something. So it's not, quote, covered like doctor's visits are, but things are so subsidized here that the medication is very cheap.
So now we're taking that detour, but we will go back to Silicon Valley because I've got an interesting question here. That since you finished with it, things have changed somewhat, right? And a lot of people are calling it like techno-fascism, techno-feudalism now. How do you see what's happening in Silicon Valley from a point of view of having worked there and now being away from it?
Well, for one thing, back in the day when I started, Google had a motto that was that don't be evil, don't be evil. And I think that has gone the way of all things, maybe. I mean, feel like
Just got rid of the don't bit now?
well, I don't think their intentions are evil, but I think there's much less concern about unanticipated outcomes, right? In other words, the profitability is the main thing, and let the chips fall where they may. I feel like that attitude is much different. When I first went to Silicon Valley, I went to work for Hewlett Packard, who was considered like the Boy Scouts of America, the clean living, nerdy kind of kid company. As we were very much about our customers. We were very much about social issues. And of course, the company was there to make a profit. All companies are there to make a profit. But I feel like a lot of those attitudes just disappeared.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it's just Silicon Valley. That's where I came from. I wonder how true that is of the whole country.
Yeah. Because CEO pay over the last few years has got absolutely stratospheric, whereas, your average, let's say Amazon worker, for example, is basically on minimum wage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Amazon's a really interesting case just because they're in so many businesses when you think about it. They have a huge technology arm, which is very comparable to a lot of the things that Google's do. And then they have
Cloud services, yeah.
Amazon Cloud Services, AWS. And but then Amazon also has a huge physical infrastructure for selling. It started with books, but now they sell everything. It's just like they're like Walmart and Google kind of built and jammed together, which is very interesting. But I think, everything seems to have turned much more profit oriented, less consumer oriented. Have you heard about the enshittification of the internet? You'll go to put that. Yes.
That is so true.
It is so true. I look at Apple. When we first moved to Silicon Valley, it was right at the time when mobile phones were starting to come out, and Apple was doing amazing, innovative things. It was so easy to use. And I look at an Apple phone now, and I'm like, wow.
That's what we're calling about.
But I look at an Apple phone now, and I say, why is it so hard to use?
Yep.
And I'm like, what happened in 20 years? What happened? But an Apple phone was something you would go, wow, look, even my grandfather can use it to, oh my God.
Wanted it intuitive.
Yes.
That was it. And it doesn't seem that way now, but because I got an iPhone.
Exactly.
And because I'm used to use it, I know how to use it. But if I give it someone that's seen one, it might not be as intuitive these days.
No, exactly. Well, a long time ago, I used to work at Intuit, which is great, which does tax software and other software for businesses in the U.S. And they were really good at looking at this kind of question for their products. And their attitude was that you have to look at the manual. We've done a bad job.
Yeah, that's a good.
And I thought that was, of course, their name is Intuit, so you'd hope.
Yeah.
But one of the questions that came up there was just an understanding of how we expect everyone to understand technology now, and whether or not that's realistic. When I was young, you had a camera.
Yeah.
And a camera was a thing that had a lens and you could set the exposure and there were certain things that you could set to were a camera. Now, if you buy a camera, it's really a computer with camera functionality.
Yeah.
And, we instead of making things easier for us to use, the expectation is we're going to learn to think like a computer.
Yeah.
And we're going to do things the computer's way.
Uh-huh.
And that's why you do so well with your phone is because you've learned over time to think like the computer. Now, I think that's the enshittification. That's a big part of it right there is that we're all forced to get away from what we were about, taking pictures, and get involved instead with what are the 27,000 settings on this.
And I think, for example, the incorporation of AI results into Google recently. As I just said to you before, when I know the answer, I know that it's wrong. So therefore, I assume it's always wrong. Is that the case with all AI? You talked earlier before we started recording about this input-output.
Yeah, I think it's a big problem that I think AI is a really interesting technology, but I think the main problem is what's the training set? Your AI comes to certain conclusions based on its input, based on how you train the AI. And if you train the AI on some reasonable set of factual information, then it can come to really interesting conclusions, things that you didn't notice.
Well, your problem is what is a fact these days, right?
There is that. And if you train the AI on what's on the internet, then you're, yes, exactly what you say. You're not necessarily training it on facts. You're almost certainly not training it on what I would consider good data.
Yeah, I mean, I put together a document. Say I put together a document. My mate Claude by Anthropic put together a document this week because I asked it, I want to know everything about a particular school and I want you to put it in a PDF so I can send it to somebody.
Yeah.
Right? And then I looked at the answers and obviously I know a person very close to me, my wife, who works at the school.
Oh.
And I said, is there anything wrong with this? Because I think there is. And she said, yeah, there's quite a few things that are wrong. And I said, well, the problem that the school has got is that is what is on the internet. And that is what is being found. So you need to change this somehow. It's not so much the AI problem, it's the input problem, where it's getting it from.
I think that's a great way to put it, very succinct. It's not the AI problem, it's an input problem.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the nail on the head.
Uh-huh. And a lot of the AI stuff might not survive very long anyway because of the cost of actually doing it.
Well, yes, I'm looking at data centers in the U.S. and saying, wow, there's a big pushback on building more data centers in the U.S. And, what will they do about that? I don't know. I mean, certainly you can build data centers in other parts of the world, but that can be very costly and it takes a long time. What's interesting is we can spin up more ideas and software and data center, these AI concepts and code and whatever, but you have to have physical hardware somewhere to store all this stuff.
Yeah.
And you can maybe spin up code in 6 months or 3 months. You can ask Claude a question and do a thing in an hour, but you can't build a data center in a month. You need to be years ahead on planning and building this. So all these interruptions in the U.S., and probably this was something that will happen in other places as well. When you put the brakes on that, then what do you do? Because those are things that have been in the works for years now. And so it's going to ultimately maybe a limit to how much AI we can afford to do.
Yeah, and also the limitations on the storage are very important because you're already seeing that data is getting deleted by companies now who said, yeah, we've got your data and that, and you keep it here. And now you've been told, if you haven't used this for 3 months, you're getting deleted. And, it seems there's no reliable storage these days.
Well, if depends on what you pay for, right?
Yeah. So
I've put my personal photos. We have about 20,000 photos that I stored in Google Cloud, not that in storage that I pay for every month. And I also ran them through the Google Vision AI, which categorized them all for me very nicely. And that was a good use of AI, although occasionally it still does weird things. I mean, if there's a picture of me next to a building Is it going to pay attention to me or is it going to pay attention to the building? It kind of depends. But there's that storage is mine as long as I pay for it.
Uh-huh.
No, I mean, seriously, I pay for storage, I pay for backup. And that is, if that's going to be deleted, I have to be notified because I am paying by the gigabyte for the data.
Yeah. Because, physical storage can also fail. I mean,
That's true.
I moved to Apple many years ago after I got, let's call it a virus on my PC
Oh,
and lost everything. I mean, seriously, everything. I had to start from
I'm
nothing.
sorry.
Yeah. And it was at that point, Apple did not get hacked very often.
Right.
And it's like, right, I moved to Apple. Yeah. And I've been there ever since and no one trapped.
Yes, well, that is true also. Although I've had several friends recently that moved back to the world of Windows from Apple, but I'm not willing to make that change.
No.
Instead, what I've done is I've diversified onto the internet. So now I have my Google storage that I pay for. I have a backup copy on a hard drive that I keep offline. And people forget, but offline is the safest way to store things. When it's unplugged, it's not connected to anything, no one's stealing it. But, you still have to be careful because it's so easy for these drives to get infected. If you're...
Yeah, and when you lose your Bitcoin seed phrase, you've got a problem, right?
Yeah, I never fell afraid of the Bitcoin. I lived through the early crash in the 2000s, and I just don't trust things like that. And maybe it's because I'm an old fart now. I banging my cane on the ground and saying, "In my day,"
shouting at clouds.
Exactly.
Let's go back to Valencia. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
So you've been here for 3 years now.
Yes.
Has Valencia lived up to expectations? And another question: what were those expectations beforehand?
Well, we wanted a place that was big enough that it could support our learning Spanish and the fact that we didn't have good Spanish when we came, but we wanted somewhere that was small enough that it hadn't lost its cultural identity, right? It still have really strong culture. And it felt like Valencia had that. And there's still a lot of tradition with payas, but also through the year, you see a lot of different traditional activities. People belong to the casals, etc. And to us, that was important. If I wanted to move somewhere that was just a retirement community for Americans, that'd be great. But
And you struggled to find out around it.
yeah, well, I mean, there are places in Spain where certainly the expats don't necessarily outnumber the locals, but there
are places in Alicante where they do.
Where they do. Yeah, but I mean, even if they don't outnumber, you get to a certain weight of culture where things tip, and we
the natural things that have always happened over the years don't happen anymore because there aren't enough people.
Exactly, and then you end up, in all the bars in town are pubs, and I'm like, if I wanted that, I would move there. I want Spain, so I moved here.
And so, did Valencia live up to expectations in that way that you found Spain?
I think so. I mean, I think it is changing a lot. I mean, to be honest, we get by using English much more than we should. But we live near the Torres de Serrano, and on weekends right now they're having traditional dance, and we can go down and see the traditional dance. We participate in vallas. We actually belong to a casal.
Oh, good. Yeah.
That allows foreigners to join. I mean, some of them only speak Valenciano, and we can't join because we're completely incompetent for that. But
hey, I've been there 26 years. I do not speak Valenciano.
Yeah.
I speak Spanish more or less perfectly, but Valenciano is just no. I understand it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's still different.
Okay.
No, I understand it because it's sort of mixed with French and Spanish, and I had a bit of French in the past. I don't now. But yeah, I can understand it. My postman used to speak to me in Valenciano all the time for some reason. Yeah. But I've never spoken it. So I haven't become a member of a casal. I haven't ever done anything involving Valenciano. My kids had to learn it at school.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah. They hated it. Because they use Spanish in the day to live.
Well, there you go. So I think it's we really feel like we're not completely integrated into Spanish life because we're not Spanish. And because I think Spaniards are very family centered.
Okay.
And so it's not like you're going to show up here and say, oh, and the people of Spain embraced me and brought me into their homes. It's not the culture here. And so it's unreasonable to expect that. But we have made friends who are Spanish. We have certainly made more friends who speak Spanish, but not necessarily born in Valencia.
Well, that's one thing, though. You've got to remember that Spanish people come to Valencia as well, and they haven't got that family structure around them either. So they're looking for friends in the same way.
Exactly. And that's a few friends we have. We have some friends from Venezuela. We have friends who've moved here from Portugal. We have, people from around the world, really.
Yeah.
There are a fair number of people here, and many of them speak Spanish. You're not, thrust into necessarily a bunch of English speakers.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of English speakers. And for people, when you just arrive, it's so easy. It's really quite easy.
Yeah, it's that thing about getting out of your comfort zone in order to be able to speak more Spanish. You just make sure you do it.
Yeah, you kind of have to force yourself. And we certainly know people that have been here 10 years and speak worse Spanish than we do.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
So 3 years. Any regrets on making the move here?
Absolutely not. I'm very glad we came here. I'm glad we came to Valencia. Valencia has really proven itself over time. It's been, the costs have gone up, but they're still extremely reasonable, especially compared to how costs have gone up back in the States even. And so we've been very happy with the institutions here. Yeah, there's government. It has bureaucracy. Tell me where it doesn't. I mean,
That's where you get to use the Spanish.
exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, there's Spanish bureaucracy. We don't always understand every little thing, but there's so much help available here. We've used guest storms as needed when we were just into a situation where we didn't understand. I recommend that. I think having someone help you through something, especially the first time, is really worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely first time.
And when we came, we originally thought, oh, we're smart people. We'll just look at all this stuff and we'll understand it. We ended up getting a lawyer in the U.S. to help us. And I also really recommend that for people because a good lawyer in the U.S. can help you navigate the process of getting your visa and really save this money in the end.
Yeah. So even though you're paying them, it saves you a lot of money. More importantly, time.
Oh yeah, absolutely time. I mean, we don't think we ever during the time we were working on getting our visas, the rules changed twice.
Yeah.
And we didn't know it.
We like changing the rules.
Yeah. Well, I mean, every governments change rules. That's what they do. And our lawyer knew about it instantly, knew exactly what to do. And even in one case was able to say to the consulate, well, wait a minute, they already put their application in. The fact that you changed the rules, you shouldn't make them go back and redo this. And she convinced them. I was shocked. Highly recommend that.
A couple of last questions. Yeah. What would be your advice to others who are maybe sitting on the fence? Because I always say, at the moment with the situation in the States, there's always a last straw for somebody.
There is. And for us, there was a last straw when he was elected the first time. And I said, I'm going to leave. I wanted to experience life in Europe anyway, and it was my motivator to take the next step.
So you were moving to something rather than just escaping from something.
Right. I had always wanted to go somewhere and live somewhere different for a while. And my idea was, we'd go for 6 months. Yeah. But when we made, and to be honest, when we first came here, we only committed ourselves for 6 months. We'll say, we'll try it out 6 months and then we'll decide.
Yeah, the stepping stone route that we thought about.
Exactly. And we came for 6 months and we didn't want to leave. So there we are. But, I think that's an important thing for people is realize these decisions don't have to be permanent.
Yeah.
You can take a minute and think about what you want and whether or not where you land and meets what you want. I mean, the first neighborhood we lived in didn't suit us. We moved to a different neighborhood. And
How far away was one neighborhood to the other? Because people might think, oh, you moved a long way though. You haven't, have you?
No, it was a 25-minute walk. So yes, we moved from Monte Olivete into El Can. And, it all has trade-offs. I think, for us, I can't imagine moving back now under pretty much any circumstances. I don't know if you put this in the podcast, but, when we moved, people go, well, he's not in office now. Because 3 years ago, he was not. I said, yeah, but the same people that put him there the first time are still pulling the levers of government. And I was much more right than I should have bet money on this because I couldn't believe I was so right.
Yeah. And I had so many American people coming over and it's saying this. And I'm the same. I should have bet a lot of money on him getting back in. And I should have become his close personal friend. So I'll get millions at the moment. That seems to be what's happening with his close personal friends.
Oh, my God. It's so cool. Super. And, even if they get rid of him, I think, which they will, a lot of things would really have to go to complete total shit for him to
So
stay
what, 3 months, 4 months?
No, I mean, into this term for him to stay in.
Yeah.
That would be a bridge too far for just about everybody. And I just cannot believe that would happen. Although, I couldn't believe a lot of other things that did actually happen. But I can't believe that would happen. But even if the orange one disappears, there will still be a lot of the same people in power. A lot of the same things will be going on. And, much as I would really like to see change, I still vote. I still support change in the U.S. I don't know that I'm going to live long enough to see a very big change.
So the answer to that advice to people sitting on the fence is get off the fence.
Yeah, get off the fence. Come and try it. I mean, if you come here for 6 months and it's not everything you dreamed of, one, I don't know what your dreams are, but I'd be surprised. Come, try it. And no decision in life is irreversible. You're not stuck where you are.
And what's your biggest takeaway from having made the move?
You learn so much about what you assume is true about yourself, about the rest of the world. And you come here and you start to ask questions like, well, why are things the way they are? Why do I believe in such limitations? I have options that I had not considered. The world is not necessarily what it looks like from your dinner table in California.
Especially if you're only looking at, for example, Fox News or something like that.
Exactly. But even if you are, I have such a different perspective on the U.S. from seeing it from the outside versus the inside. And you have a different perspective on Spain from seeing it from the inside rather than the outside. I just think wherever you go, it's unavoidable to learn things.
I've got a question. What was your perspective about Spain before coming here?
I remember when Franco died. And so most of my perception about Spain was built in the few years after his death.
So transition from
transition now. And I was like, yeah, Spain is a nice place, but it's kind of backward. Yeah. It's behind the times. There's nobody speaks English there. So, you'd be better off going somewhere like Germany or France, or even though English was a big deal in France in those days, either Germany or the UK, Scotland, whatever, instead of trying to go to Spain but I think that's really changed. I think in the last 20 years, Spain has just had a renaissance. And I see it here now, particularly. I don't think that Spain's behind anybody, really.
Do you use fast trains?
Do I use what?
The fast trains?
Oh, yeah. I love the fast trains. I love the trains. Transportation is good. The overall infrastructure is good. Employment is still a problem for many Spanish people, and I'm very sympathetic to that.
Especially younger people.
Especially younger people. So there's certainly a ways to go for Spain as a country, but as a retiree, I'm living on my savings. I don't have to worry about that. And I feel like, I'm paying taxes, so I'm contributing to this economy. I'm contributing to this society, at least in some really basic ways. And so I don't feel guilty about being here or whatever.
I think that's really interesting because it gives a perspective of somebody who's come over
and has actually lived the life here and found out what it is. But also, I was really interested. As soon as said you worked in Silicon Valley, and going, okay, we can chat about that. Because we get so many people from California and from Seattle and places like that.
Oh, yeah.
Just going, I want out of this, if you want to call it the rat race.
It's very much
You know.
a rat race.
I want out of this 60, 70 hour expectation.
Exactly. And I feel like it's such a false expectation, because there were many hours that I was at work that I was not productive because I was exhausted.
Yeah.
It's just
And so
stupid.
when that happens here, what you do? You have a siesta.
Exactly.
Whereas there you get science.
Well, it's amazing how much how much you can slide while you're still at work, because nobody can keep that. I mean, maybe a few 20-year-olds can keep that pace for a couple of years, but nobody can sustain that.
Yeah. So you're not effective. You might be there for a lot of hours, but it's pointless, really.
Yeah. And I think places do better when they don't push that pen. But, that's a culture.
In Spain, we definitely don't push that side of thing.
Exactly. I mean, well, the idea that there's work that we need to get done, and we're going to get that done. And
I might take some time to do it.
we might
It'll get done.
Yeah, it'll get done. It'll get done. And the idea that there's more important things than how many hours you spend at work. I mean, people in Silicon Valley actually brag to each other about how many hours they spent at work. And I'm like, wait a minute. Shouldn't we be ashamed of that?
It's a different attitude, isn't it?
It is. But I mean, what? If I'm not there on Monday, the world's going to blow up. I mean, people have a little bit inflated sense of what their company does and what they do. Well, it's like, I'm sorry, we're just not that important.
Well, it's like a Hewlett Packard. It's like, if I'm not there on Monday, it's like, everyone not going to be able to print everyone else forevermore.
Exactly. I mean, life goes on.
Life on ancient things underneath these endless skies. Now I know just what home feels like.
Before you go, 3 things. First, when are you moving to Valencia? If you're thinking about it even just vaguely, now's a good time to have a conversation with us. Get in touch through the website at valencia-property.com, or drop us a message on WhatsApp as well. You can find my WhatsApp somewhere on the site. But anyway, information at valencia-property.com to set up a call with us. I'm actually recording this about an hour before I've got a call. We work with buyers at every stage, including the ones who are still just working out whether this is actually going to be something they're going to be able to do, and eventually whether it's going to happen. Secondly, what do you want to hear more of in the podcast? More interviews like Lisa's, more market analysis, more on the practical stuff about visas, healthcare, schooling, bureaucracy, more of our quizzes, more of our interviews with the people who work with us. Let us know. We read everything that comes in, and it really shapes what we do next. And third, coming up, we'll be looking at what the rental market is doing to the buying market in Valencia as a whole. We'll be looking at new construction sometime in the future and what it means for buyers who don't want to wait 2 years for keys. And we have more interviews in the pipeline with people who've made the move here, and they could tell you what it's actually like on the ground, and more importantly, what it's like working with us. Thanks for listening. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I believe I'm obliged to say that, even though I've never said it before. And we'll see you next time.